This is James Corbett of CorbettReport.com welcoming you back to Economics 101, and joining me today is Richard C. Cook, whose lengthy biography includes time spent in the Carter White House, as well as over 20 years in the U.S. Treasury Department. His latest book is We Hold These Truths, The Hope of Monetary Reform. Richard C. Cook, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much.
Well, Mr. Cook, you've proposed a sweeping set of measures to reform the economic system and bring economic sanity back to our financial structure, and you've called that the Cook Plan. But before we get into the solution, I think it would be beneficial to talk about the problem. So you've said that, quote, the existing monetary system is not free enterprise and it is not capitalism, it is cancer. Can you elaborate on that?
What we have is a monetary system where every dollar that comes into existence originates as debt that is owed to a bank, which they have created by making credit out of thin air through their lending privileges that are granted to them under public charter. What we have given the banks the right to do is to make money out of nothing, to lend that to the public, and then to charge interest for its use. This lending and this interest gradually sucks all of the value out of the economy, leaving our nation and other nations without a medium of exchange for the legitimate use in trade. That's the cancer that has afflicted the Western economies of all Western nations and that we're suffering under today. And one result is that every period of economic growth is nothing more than a bank-generated bubble, which then collapses and then is regenerated in another bubble. The Obama administration is trying to restart the economy through a bubble based on Treasury debt because they no longer have the ability, with the collapse of the housing bubble, to inflate any other value within this economy.
Well, Mr. Cook, I think the events of the last year have shown all but the most foolhardy of the economic cheerleaders out there that there are serious structural problems with our economic system. And obviously the inevitable question then becomes, how do we actually fix that system? And as I say, you've proposed a bold and sweeping set of economic reform measures under the rubric of the Cook Plan. Tell us about that proposal.
What we need to do is to introduce purchasing power at the grassroots level, at the level of working people. It's very simple to do that, and the way to do it is to issue money directly into the hands of the public. And instead of creating these huge trillion-dollar bank bailouts, which are only intended to generate more lending at usury, the way to do it, and this grows out of my long experience at the U.S. Treasury Department, is instead of bailing out the banks, simply to give money to the working public in the form of a monthly dividend, which is a stipend that is paid directly to individuals. And we can do this to start by giving every adult in the United States vouchers in the amount of $1,000 a month, which can then be spent within the working economy on necessities of life like food, housing, communication, transportation, and so on. This would be a direct introduction of purchasing power. It would be payments made to individuals without recourse to government borrowing or to taxation. It would be simply to set up a recovery account, and there are different ways to do that. One would be to do it through the posting of government bonds at the Federal Reserve, and then the Federal Reserve to credit the federal government with the money for these payments. It's a procedure that's been used before that could be used again. Once this money is spent within the economy by the people who need to have it, that is the rank and file, the grassroots of our nation, it can then be deposited in either existing banks or in a new series of what I call community development banks, where it would be used to capitalize low-interest lending within the community for things like loans to small businesses, student loans, loans for local manufacturing, and loans for family farming. These two measures taken together, the payment of the vouchers and the use of them to capitalize low interest lending at the grassroots level, would completely transform our economy and would produce a recovery over a matter of months.
So just to be clear, this isn't money that we're talking about being generated in the usual way as debt money owed back to the Fed.
That's right. It would be direct payments made by the federal government to the working men and women of the country.
I see. So how do you envision this type of economic reform playing out in the longer term in terms of economic and monetary reform?
Well, the problem is that every scheme that has been developed so far, including all of the recovery plans by the Obama administration, come from top-down spending from either the government by capitalizing infrastructure or from the banking system by more lending. None of those put purchasing power directly into the hands of the people. They all come through these gigantic programs from huge agencies from the top down, and nothing is done to benefit working men and women. The purpose of money is to put purchasing power, to put a medium of exchange in the hands of anyone who has a good or a service to sell, so that it can be purchased by someone who wants to purchase it or someone who needs it or needs to use it. Our monetary system has completely failed to provide people in the community with what they rightfully should have as a medium of exchange. This is where the recovery has to come from. It has to come from the bottom up, from the people who do the work and the people who consume the products, not these gigantic collective programs either at the federal level or through the banking system.
Well, Mr. Cook, this is obviously a very fascinating topic, but unfortunately we don't have time to go into it in too much detail. So very quickly, tell people how they can find out more about you and your work.
Well, I have a website, which is www.richardccook.com, and you can find my book and my articles and a lot of other information, new things I'm working on the website. I have to point out there's a C in there, Richard C. Cook. RichardCook.com was some real estate brokerage, so we had to put the C in order to get the domain name. But there on my website, all the information is available.
Excellent. Well, Mr. Richard C. Cook, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you very much.